Hey everyone, welcome to Working Forward. I'm Izzy Cannell.
And I'm Brad Golden. We're the Workplace Insights and Advisory team here at BirdSense and your co-hosts for Working Forward. If you're new here, this is where we swap stories and ideas with people who are shaping what the workplace looks like next. Working Forward unites the global workplace community through inspiring conversations with people driving change by sharing ideas you can act on today and revisit whenever you need a little spark.
All right, today we're hanging out with Michael Dunford. Michael's a director of business development at Catalyst. More importantly, he's a design thinker. He's got some opinions to share about why we should stop guessing, start experimenting when it comes to our workplaces. Michael loves to stir the pot on workplace thoughts just like we do. So we're really excited to have him today.
Yeah, we dig into what's going on in the office environments today, the space pilots, and how to actually make changes that stick.
Okay, this is going to be a fun one. There's a lot you can steal for your own workplaces. So let's get into it. Michael, we're going to start with a quick intro. Tell us more about your current role and how'd you get into the work you do?
Yeah, thanks, Izzy and Brad. Very awesome to be here. So like you said, I'm the Director of Business Development for Catalyst Workplace Activation, a commercial furniture and prefab construction dealer. I'm based out of the Pacific Northwest, and we have a huge range of clients from big tech to healthcare. I see firsthand how spaces then get planned, furnished, and then actually used or not used. I'm LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. I also share my workplace insights through a video series called Random Workplace Thoughts. So go smash that like and subscribe button, where I'm trying to translate big strategy ideas and concepts into humorous and relatable moments. And I think I'm here on the pod as someone that lives in the intersection of workplace strategy, then space planning and design, and then the real world behaviors of the people who are utilizing those spaces.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate and give a plug for Michael. Like his content right now in the office space is so refreshing. It kind of becomes redundant and stale, and it's really great to have, your perspective, Michael, and your humor that's kind of layered into some things that become kind of dull. So, yes, stoked to have you here today.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch, your series, Random Workplace Thoughts, really pick up traction. And, something, Michael, you and I have talked about in the past is kind of making community in the workplace space. And it's been really fun to see how the community sort of engaged with your thoughts, right? I'm curious if there's been any specific posts from that series that have really surprised you with how much, traction they've gotten or the kind of responses you've gotten.
That's a great question. But I would say that the most fascinating thing that's happened so far is the comment section on TikTok.
Really?
I will share a video on RTO policies and what I'm seeing and why it's interesting, and just the vitriol and hatred for going into the office of people in that comment section, which TikTok is known for the trolls. So I should expect some of that, but it's kind of cool, actually. I'd like to aggregate some of that data at some point and say, are there patterns out there, and are leadership understanding, the actual insights or feelings of people?
Interesting. I'm actually not on TikTok. So are you sharing the same videos you're sharing on LinkedIn on TikTok, and you're getting a really different response, or is it a different type of content?
I don't want to get too granular and boring here because people probably don't care about this, but on TikTok, it is slightly different. I will maybe change the music a little bit, or some of the vernacular are edited a little bit differently. But for the most part, yes, they're the same.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that answer. I know, Brad's always talking about speak to your audience, right? And we know the TikTok audience is a little different. So it makes sense that there's some changes you make between the LinkedIn community and the TikTok community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so curious, like, Michael, if you do dig into that, just because of the different demographics that are consuming media in those different platforms, right? Like, just generally speaking, like a younger crowd towards TikTok, and then a little bit older towards Instagram. I'm making huge generalizations right now, but it'd be kind of interesting to see if there's some correlations there about the receptiveness to some of these posts that you're putting out there, and the different demographics. So it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah. All right. Well, should we get into the workplace topics?
Let's get into it.
All right. So starting with setting the stage for today's conversation, how should we be thinking about space planning as part of a bigger picture today? What's your perspective on that? And kind of what's the problem, if you think there is one, with the conventional way space planning is being done?
Yeah, I mean, I think the basic answer is space planning is still treated like this one-time event. Everything that we do and I do is treated like this big. I mean, everything's leading up on the design and the planning and then the installation of everything and then the move-in day and it's like goodbye, see you later. And it's not an ongoing process and I think maybe it should be.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great answer. I mean, we obviously at Verge Sense, we didn't tee this question up specifically for this, but at Verge Sense, we obviously work very much in that kind of ongoing measurement, right? And so we see this a lot, and we even see it with those who are measuring, right? They kind of go in with a specific goal around their measurement, and maybe it's more operational versus thinking about how their environments should change, or yeah, there's just a lot of gold in the idea of keeping an eye on observational measurement of a space. So great call out.
I mean, we're designing spaces and places based on theory. And the theory is different, but for example, like this open office will increase collaboration. And then how do we actually know if that worked, right? Without understanding or testing. And so right now it just feels like potentially people are spending hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to do something without knowing if it's actually improving productivity or collaboration, et cetera.
Yeah. With you mentioned that we're planning a lot based on theory. I'm curious. I know you're obviously immersed in the furniture world, physical environment. You went to NeoCon this year. I don't know, what other kind of conferences you might have attended, but what is that theory right now? When we think about the physical space, what theory are we kind of planning on?
Well, the theory, I mean, it's different for everybody, not to give a non-answer, but it's really, and I don't like to design based on theories. I mean, I like us to actually meet with the clients and understanding what their goals are, and then we can go from there, because everyone's going to have a little bit different thing that they're trying to accomplish. But at the end of the day, we are trying to design based on vibes right now, and we're lacking a little bit of the data.
Yeah, vibes is it's a little bit elusive, right? Like, and vibes could be different depending on who you are and the type of work that you're doing or the type of day that you're having. If I'm sitting in traffic, in LA trying to get to the office, it can be kind of miserable when I get to the office. If it's just super hectic, I might want like a little zone or something. And there could be the contrast of that too. I might be looking for a little pick me up, so give me some energy. So those vibes, like, what are your thoughts right now about measuring that or getting beyond theory around, this vibe kind of movement?
I mean, so the word I'm hearing that popped into my head is measuring. And I think you guys are experts at measuring stuff, especially at least from an outside looking in perspective, from quantitative data, right?
Right.
And I hate to use jargon and stuff like that, but quantitative. I'm thinking about qualitative data all the time because I don't have access to all of that fancy technology that you guys do. So I'm thinking about how are we witnessing people in space in real time, utilize the areas and observe their behaviors, and then potentially also do surveys. And so mixing the two, though, between the humans, what they're actually doing, and then the measuring of the space like you do, is I think magic happens.
Yeah, that's great. I know we're going to get into a conversation about piloting here for a second, but I'm curious while we're talking about the measurement topic, do you see a big difference in kind of the cadence of planning or the process of planning for your customers that rely more on measurement than those that don't? Maybe because they don't have the resourcing to do so, or, they're a newer organization, whatever reason it might be.
That's a great question. I mean, I do see a lot of differences, and it comes down to the client, the type of client, and where they're at in their journey. And we have some clients that are very, very complex and intelligent and know what they're doing. They're sophisticated. And then some that are just in that space, and that's okay, where they want to click an easy button and kind of move forward. So I think it's meeting them where they're at. But yeah, there's times when we just really don't have the resources to dig in as much as we really should into planning and data and seeking to understand. And we're sort of pushed by outside forces.
I'm gonna dig in a little bit deeper here, and this could be somewhat of a hot take, but I'm curious, what's contributed to this process of like the set it and forget it type mentality? You know, like have we seen our partners in the design industry or the brokers evolve and want to have these continuous relationships similar to what you're trying to do on the furniture side right now?
Yeah, I mean, it. Speaking of hot takes, I'm trying to figure out what I should and shouldn't say, right? Like, I don't want to piss anyone off.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's going to be certain partners out there, people in the ecosystem of commercial real estate and space that get it and want to do the right thing.
Right.
But there's still people out there that are wanting to just get the deal done and move on to the next thing, right? And so they're in their mode. In their mind, it's just like, how can we get this and walk away? So, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah. Have you seen any engagement from the client side of requesting this type of, you know, relationship where they're like, we want this to be a partnership that's kind of ongoing. And so they're actually putting the pressure on those other layers. Have you seen that happen at all?
Yeah, for sure. Especially, like I said, with those sophisticated clients that have maybe been doing this for a little bit longer. But to be honest, it comes down to folks like you and I. We need to be the ones to push this. And it's not because they don't want it or anything. They just have so much going on. They're relying on us to be that consultant, that thought leader, to say, hold on, let's keep going, moving forward. And we've got the project teams to help with that. But can we also, every once in a while, take a step back, look at this strategically and say, how are we going to start to plan for tomorrow so that we can do both?
Right.
Yeah, I really love that, the duality, right? Of like, let's keep going, because our customers, your customers, right? There's so much going on. There's so much on their backs. There's structures to how budgets work and when things need to be spent. And, you know, there's just a lot of process to the things that need to keep moving, versus, you know, that strategic piece that you said, taking the step back. And we definitely get caught in the middle of both of those, you know, dualities as well. And, you know, what's operational, what's strategic, that kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun, but it's certainly, you know, I love the reminder of always keeping that, you know, on our mind, that we've got to be getting work done here, even if we want to take a step back and reflect and kind of analyze and observe. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in my life, there's an FDOB, a first day of business, that we have to hit. And so if we're stopping that or slowing it down because we want to, you know, talk about touchy-feely things like workplace strategy, it can sometimes not go right.
Not the time, Michael. Not the time.
Don't go near that workplace strategy. Yeah, I think maybe for, you know, a lot of our listeners, I hope will be more familiar with those FDOB schedules, but maybe just an example, right? So if we look at a typical project that you're working on, what's the timeline from like we're designing, we're selecting our environment, our physical pieces, to the actual FDOB, right? It's hard to go back when you're actually at install or you've started moving along those different steps. So what's that general timeline? And because of that timeline, when do you think the right timing is for doing that reflection piece?
The classic answer, and I'm just going to say it till I'm blue in the face, is early and often. We need to, so yes, there's always a schedule that's created, and on the furniture and interiors side, that schedule goes along with the construction schedule, etc. So yes, that schedule is dialed, and there's specific times and dates for when things need to happen, and design development is always that thing that takes up the most time of the schedule. But if we can get in early, partners like you and I, or different trusted partners, then we could not necessarily be as rushed, right? And so we tend to be brought in when, oh, I need something in 2 months. And then we have to scramble. There's no strategy that happens. All we're doing is reacting, and we'll do it, but it's just not ideal for us and for the end user.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I don't know, I would almost say it's unfortunate that the process is kind of baked in this, you know, that crunch time where you're just scrambling around and everything feels so intense and there's no like, you know, good thinking that's happening under that pressure. And I think there's like this line of like just cruising with the status quo, and depending on that, you know, pressure that you have, you start to get really crunched at the end of it. So I really like that piece of advice, of starting early, you know, and I know it's been repeated, but I think it's worth us mentioning again. If we can start early and have these types of conversations, it'll be extremely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that's been really interesting in the market, I know we have one customer at least, a bigger customer who has been experimenting with furniture as a service. It's still not something that's necessarily taken off in the market from our understanding. What are your thoughts on it, Michael? What are the challenges? Where might it work? How does it fit into this kind of culture of flexibility and experimentation?
Conceptually, I like it a lot. I mean, I think there's really successful models for space as a service and everything else in our lives as a service. So why not furniture? I think it's about figuring out how to make it actually work, financially first and foremost, but then, logistically, people want certain design aesthetics and preferences. And so then how do you have this? I'm thinking in my head, how do you have this massive inventory then of all these parts and pieces and kits of parts to pull from in a way that makes it the right kind of service and yet scalable and doable? It seems daunting, but I know we can make it happen at some point.
Yeah, I was going to that thing of kit of parts too, back from my days at Herman Miller and thinking about, the OG Action Office, aka the modern day cubicle. And I think, what happens there is like within those kit of parts, like can we experiment with providing different types of materials to refresh or different shapes to different seat designs? I don't know. I'm just kind of riffing here, but like what is available from us? Like if we had the structure, like the skeleton of what we needed to be able to build a desk and a chair, what things would be to our disposal to actually kind of change or create refresh?
Well, that is a good point. I think there's a potential to gain a lot of efficiency. So this is a total random thought that just popped in my head, but I was meeting with a very talented architect designer from a big firm recently for lunch, and they were saying they've done a lot of data and metrics around space planning, and it turns out for them around 70% of the spaces they plan are all the same concepts, right? A conference room is about this big, collaboration spaces are about yay big. But what changes, the big impact, is with those, very important critical spots like the lobby or kitchenettes or, community-based areas. And it makes me realize that 70% can be a kit of parts of furniture too, right? There can be things that just work. A desk's a desk. But could you change like the screen on it to make it a little bit more branded? Or
Right.
There's something interesting to explore there.
Yeah. I was thinking about a client that we had, two conference rooms right next to each other, similar sizes. I think they're like 8 to 10 people. But one of them had like a vibrant red chair setup and the other one did not. And the vibrant red chair setup was used all the time. And we couldn't really figure it out until they started to look at the difference between those two rooms. And that was the only factor that was really difference between the two. Like the tech was the same. The window placement was the same, but it was really like the presentation of this type of material in this way. And it was branded, towards this company's culture. So it was kind of a magnet for people, which was really interesting.
Shall we say it was the vibe factor?
Vibes are high with
The
red
vibes
chairs.
are high.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had a customer with a similar story. They had wallpaper and like kind of just really more interesting, finishes in some rooms and others not so much. And they saw a pretty big difference. So, it's, again, back to the measurement piece, it's really interesting when you start being able to put some numbers around those things.
Well, and the red chairs and the wallpaper makes me think of something I've been contemplating a lot lately, which is neuroaesthetics.
Ooh.
Neuroaesthetics is cool. It's the study of how color, light, texture, form, all that influences our brains, and physically and mentally. And so, Muto, which is this fantastic furniture company,
I love Muto.
we love, along with Google and John Hopkins, did a study where they created 3 different room types with 3 different vibes, right? And had people wear this Google wearable band, and they measured how they felt, the biometric data when they're in those spaces, and it changed a lot. And so the aesthetic experience someone had in the space could boost blood blood flow in their brain by 10%, for example. So not only are we having a mental experience, but we're having a cognitive experience, but we're having a physical experience too. So yes, the chairs could impact something.
Yeah. So cool.
Something that you both, I don't know if we've actually talked about this in the past, but something you both share, both having furniture background, but also both kind of having artistic, hobbies on the side or work on the side. And I think, when we talk about things like the color, the, neuro, what did you call it? Not neurodivergence, but the neuro,
Well, this is neuroaesthetics.
neuroaesthetics.
This leads into neuroinclusivity, et cetera. But yeah.
Yeah. I see a lot of that kind of, just what art inspires in us, right? There's a lot of kind of parallels there of how the workplace is inspiring us, and whether it's inspiring us or not, right, can depend a lot on the thought that goes into those elements.
Yeah, I was just, this is going to go down a different path and we could cut this totally, but I was just thinking about some of the brilliant art programs that a number of our customers have now, seeing these customers start to curate one kind of local type artists, bringing them into the office, sharing that artwork. So as people come in, they kind of feel that vibe. And the same thing also in these kind of grander offices, having like very, legit art, collections within their offices. It really kind of sets the mood, sets the tone of what you're going to experience when you come into the office. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, but what we really want to talk about at the end of this podcast is piloting, experimentation. The furniture as a service is kind of a piece of that. But in general, Michael, really curious what you're seeing customers do right now as far as A/B testing or just trying new environments, how they're kind of working with their employee customers on understanding how those pilots are doing. Just curious what you're seeing.
Yeah, when you reached out and said you wanted to talk to me about pilots, I was very excited because this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And what I like about pilots is they don't have to be high stakes. Mm-hmm. That we can test small things first, and we can do it in different ways and get creative. So we can think about, all right, I'm putting on my furniture hat for a second. So we can think about those furniture pieces that you might want to test. We could lease them, right? So they don't have to hit your CapEx. We could reutilize your existing stuff, but think about it in a different way. So there's a redesign element. We can augment some of that existing furniture with some new so that you get an even better result, but it's a less of a capital expenditure. So piloting is the way to go. And I think what we need to start to do is actually have some fun with it and get excited about it versus having so much apprehension, around change. Recently, this just happened to us. So recently we there was a public utilities company in the Pacific Northwest here that had this area of their floor plan that was very underutilized. And it had your classic like tall cubicles, and it looked a little old school, just felt outdated. So we said, why not? Let's help you pilot this space as a different way of working. And also they wanted to get people back into the office, right? So there was that kind of incentive for RTO. So we just tore stuff out, and we're storing it for them. So it's not like it went in a landfill. But we put in multiple workspace types like focus, collaboration, lounge spaces. We've done some really fresh furniture ideas for them, like these work pods that are hexagonal shaped, that are kind of just intriguing and attractive. And I think we've created a good mix of ingredients for a good neighborhood. And so it's almost like a little co-working space within their space. And for a public utilities company that was very old, they're not used to doing things differently. So far, the traditional, exactly. The reception's been really interesting, and we're just testing it qualitatively with surveys and observation. I think what we are missing is that data portion of it. How is the space actually being utilized?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the story there, and how there's sort of the moment of like, well, why the heck not, right? Like, what's here isn't working. And I'm curious, what do you think makes a good, like, what's the right timing for a pilot project? Is it that moment where there's just something that's really not working, or is it more forward looking than that? Is it when there's an office move? Is it, yeah. What are your thoughts on like the right timing for getting a pilot going?
I think the pilots are good when there's a problem, and the problem can arise in different areas or timing wise with someone's life cycle of their space. But yeah, there has to be something that we're actually trying to solve for. So that's the first answer. When we're moving into a new space, for example, let's not pilot. Let's actually try to get it right, but have areas of opportunities for coming in and changing things up on day two. But yeah, I think there's a really fantastic opportunity for owners or end users that are in a space and they've been in there for a while, and now it's saying, what could we change?
Yeah, something that stood out to me when you first started talking about the piloting part is it doesn't have to be so dramatic. It doesn't have to be so extreme. You can start small. And I'm kind of wondering, do you have other examples of how customers could potentially start to experiment on these kind of small levels that maybe aren't such a huge investment and so much, obviously it's going to require some time, but just kind of some of that low-hanging fruit that you think might be helpful?
I mean, yeah, low-hanging. You could start with a space. You could pick a space that you feel like is broken, right? And you could do something as simple as change the orientation of the furniture within that space. And that's what's cool about pilot programs as well, is you don't have to necessarily change the architecture and go on a huge cost and construction journey. You could seriously just move things around. Now, if the furniture components aren't flexible, maybe they're not on wheels or they're extremely heavy, that can be a challenge. But yeah, start with like one space and just see what happens.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. I know, Brad and I both have lots of examples from our customers where there are larger areas where they could certainly, do a bigger pilot, but also some great examples of individual spaces or just a small grouping of spaces. One that comes to mind for me, we had a customer who had a medium to large conference room and had relatively small event sizes in there, and they ripped out the interior wall and they put in four 3 to 4 person orange box huddle products. And we're having many more meetings because there were now, 4 to 1 as far as spaces available. So I love that kind of looking at one specific space and being able to start looking at the ROI of that is huge.
Well, and I almost feel like I put cart before the horse when I said, try a space and rearrange the furniture. I think you also need to understand if it's broken, not working, why? Why is that happening? And that will inform what you decide to do next. So I'm seeing anecdotally a lot of these cool collaborative lounge settings that we put into a space. They're on every single floor plan that you see, right? You've got desks, and then there's a cool little pocket of lounge space, and they aren't being utilized. They're not being used. So great, we just spent all this money on sofas, and yet they're sitting dormant, right? Now, I could rearrange them, but it might not work either. So you have to understand why. I have a theory that a lot of those lounge spaces don't get used because of this concept of prospect and refuge. This idea that people like to see, but they don't want to be seen. It's like human beings evolving in the savannah. We wanted to be near the tree line, but we would never go out into the middle of an empty field because God knows what could attack us and kill us, right?
Spooky.
So then maybe we need to that couch that's super low, maybe we need to add a shroud to the back to make it feel more inviting and a place that we could seek some refuge, right? So we just can't willy-nilly change things without understanding too what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that example. I think being on the data side, Brad and I see with our customers all the time that these spaces are, in the data, they are being used far less than most of the other environments in an office. But hot take, I'm not convinced that we need to just get rid of them completely, right? So I love the suggestion you have because from an experience standpoint, I think we can all agree that we don't want to go back to just like a massive floor plate full of desks, right?
Oh, no.
We need some breaks, and as you were speaking to, we need these sort of retreats. But I'm not sure what exactly the solution is because they aren't necessarily getting used super well. They do accommodate spillover. We do have some regions where we see them getting used more. I know, Brad, you've been working with some customers where the APAC region sees those used a little bit more. I don't know if you've picked up any qualitative hints on why that is.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. So like the open collaboration spaces in APAC, for example, are used quite heavily, specifically in India. And yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with some of the cultural norms, and I like that. What was the theory called that you just brought up, Michael? Gosh, you got some good ones.
Prospect and refuge.
Yeah, prospective refuge. That should be easy to remember. But another one that I've been kind of exploring is proxemics, and it's the idea of like us having our own bubbles, and our own comfort level in our own little bubbles, and those can vary. If you're in New York, you can have a pretty tight bubble and feel pretty good, but maybe here in LA, because you're in the car culture all the time, your bubble is quite wide, and so that can definitely influence, how good you feel about, empty space or people being around you as well.
Can we have a whole separate episode at some point about proxemics and really dive into sociopedal and sociofugal furniture layouts and all? I love talking about that shit, and it's probably going to lose me followers if I talk about it on my social media stuff, because people will be like, how do you spell that? What is that?
Yeah.
Come on over. It's a safe space here. Coming fall 2025. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I think we've covered some great ideas though. There's some low hanging fruit that you can start to experiment with. There's also this notion of like, there doesn't need to be a rigidity for a pilot. Like you don't need, a pending lease decision where you're starting to outfit a new space and you just need to pilot new furniture. This can be a continuous and ongoing thing that you take on internally. Like, I'm kind of wondering if you have advice for those that are seeking out this type of experimentation mindset. Like, who should they seek out for as far as like, experience in this or maybe some expertise? Who can they consult with that, you've seen effective in this type of process?
I mean, they can reach out to us, right? VergeSense, Michael Dunford. That's a cheesy answer, but it's true. They, start internally though. I think it's really important for, maybe there's a subcommittee or there's a group of people that, once again, none of this matters unless there's a problem occurring, right? So you've identified there's a problem. You need to define what success looks like, then define what you're going to measure, and then where you're going to start, and then what that path looks like. And then, yes, you're going to have to bring in some partners potentially. And that could be a design partner or an architect, or it could be something as simple as, furniture as a service, something like, hey, come in and help me move things around or rethink a space. And then VergeSense, how do we then understand after, a month to 2 months to 3 months, what's happening? And then data without, I'm ripping this off of someone who said this recently at a Neocon conference thing, but whatever, I'll figure out how to quote them later.
Yeah,
but we'll give them the shout out in the notes or something.
Yeah.
But data without context is just noise, right? So right now there's a lot of noise. It's super noisy, and we need to figure out how to like actually synthesize that.
Yeah. I think a long time ago I was speaking with Omar Ramirez, and he had a similar sentiment. He's like, data's just numbers. Like the numbers don't care, unless you give it some sort of context. So yeah.
Good old I love
them.
Yeah, we got to get Omar on. Give him a shout out.
Yeah.
I love as part of that, you emphasize starting internally, right? I think one thing that we see is how powerful it can be when there's all of that internal alignment, right? And a part of that being communication to employees about what's happening, whether it's your space is being measured or you're going through a pilot, right? Helping everyone along and really having that internal championing before, bringing in all the partners. And we've seen it make a huge difference in kind of the success of projects. I'm curious if you've had a similar experience.
Yeah, I totally have. And once again, I just want us to, because to me, a pilot is a lever that we can pull, but we need to come back to the big picture. And there's a lot of big pictures happening right now, which are return to office policies. How do we boost engagement? How do we boost utilization of space? Our castle numbers need to be higher, all that. And it comes down to user experience and the experience someone might have in an environment. And so I don't want us to lose sight of that, right? That's what this needs to be, is how do we create amazing experiences in environments that people can't get at home? And so can I go down a rabbit hole real quick on something?
Please. Stir the pot.
So New York Times did this top 100 movies of the 21st century. And what they did was it just came out, and then they just did a podcast about it on the New York Times Daily. They asked 500 filmmakers and 200,000 readers to name the best movies of the 21st century. The list is awesome. There's only one streaming film that made the list. It was Roma by Alfonso Cuarón. Only one streaming film. And it goes to, and I started thinking, why is that? Why are the movies that we see in movie theaters, giant movie theaters with other people, why are those the most popular ones and not the ones that immediately just get zapped into our homes? And I think there's this magic of the theater, and there's something interesting about exploring the magic of workplace and workplace experience. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, absolutely agree, right? We've all walked into a customer space and had that feeling of the, you know, the magic of this theater, this space. And I think I work remote. I've been working remote for a long time, but I get to visit our customer spaces, and those are the moments, right, where it all comes together. Like all of the advisory we're giving to our customers, the way we're supporting them with the data, you feel that theater, that piece of show, and how it impacts you, right, on just so many different levels. Brad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm totally on board here with you guys. I hope this hole is big enough for all of us to go down. But, you know, it's like we're visceral beings. We have all these little hairs on our arms and all over our body that is consuming all this crazy information that gets lost upon us, you know, that we're not necessarily always paying attention to or have the capacity to pay attention to. And I think, you know, these neurons are firing in ways, especially when we're, you know, immersed in a movie theater experience or in a beautiful office, that there are things that it's really that vibe check, you know, and there's things that I think we can start to hone in on from like a quantitative and qualitative way to start to try to get to that, you know, like how do we measure like these great vibes? But there is something there for sure as far as like being there in person and experiencing these things, not just with our minds, you know, like you walk into that office and it has some like cool design, but you can just feel that it's hollow. Like somebody has put some like fancy, you know, wall decals up and some bright colored furniture, and you're like, it just doesn't give you that feeling, you know. You want this feeling all the way through, like every little touch point really matters. And I think that curation of that experience is so important. So totally agree with both of you guys on that.
Yeah, and I think there's this piece too of like the appreciation, right? If you're an employee and you go into those spaces and you kind of have that like, wow, they did this for me, for us, right? You have that moment of like, I matter, my experience matters to the company. And I know we've all been talking about that for a long time. This is why we have culture. This is why we have unique spaces. But it really makes a big difference if you're an employee and you can see it and feel it from your company.
Yeah, now we're talking about spaces that are rooted in authenticity. And that comes down to company culture. And company culture is really tough to maintain and nurture in remote only environments. I'm not saying remote is bad, but that's why that's the North Star. So yeah, I love this idea of authenticity, of good design, of spaces that feel real and not phony. And that comes down to a pilot as well. Like a pilot needs to happen for the right reasons, and then it needs to be done with some intention, but it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to take a long time. But yes, you need to think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think another lesson too is that being able to adapt or not necessarily be afraid of failing. Now, I know that can be, you know, capitalist speak, and like we need to make money and there's a lot of pressure and all that. But at the same time, like there's going to be some mistakes, and just being able to look at those mistakes and learn from them, you know, and not to say that it's anyone's fault, but things are moving very quickly today. Our expectations are changing very rapidly. The world's changing very rapidly. And so things become quite outdated very quickly today. And so we have to be able to understand what's working, what's not working, back to Michael's point of like identifying that problem first and then starting to iterate from there.
Yeah, mistakes are fun though. Like that's
Totally.
we need that.
Yeah.
We need to. I mean, I was gonna do a coaching like sports metaphor, but look at me, I'm not very athletic, so I probably shouldn't do that. We need to fail fast. We need to fail forward. All the buzzwords, but I mean that's where the fun stuff happens. And yes, failure, though, if it's very expensive, can be scary. So I think like if we can find ways to mitigate some of the risk, but still have the desired results, that's where magic could happen.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too is learning from those failures and kind of going back to a conversation we were having earlier a little bit about community, right? One thing I love about post pandemic workplace community is sharing our failures with others and learning from others and having these conversations, right? I mean, you all from where you sit at Catalyst, you get to see all sorts of things with your customers. We similarly see all sorts of things with our customers. And I think one of the most powerful things we've been doing for our customers lately is helping make connections and helping them share with each other what those failures are and learn in that way. So it's been really neat to observe the opening of those conversations more between different companies and between partners and all of that.
Yeah, well, we started this conversation by talking about how space planning right now, the reason it's broken is it's seen as this one-time only event, and it's not this ongoing process. And I think that that's where we could come back to, because what's happening is a client or a tenant or an end user is moving into an environment and they think it should be perfect. And if we could change that paradigm to be, it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be imperfect, and that's okay. And so we need to constantly be iterating on it. Then maybe we can just break down some of these barriers.
Yeah, I totally agree about embracing the idea of imperfection. It's related to like that fear of failure thing, and just, being able to have comfort in making mistakes and leaving yourself some room to have that flexibility, and more so even from like a strategic perspective, baking that little comfort level into that and just having that as a mindset, I think is a really powerful one.
Yeah, my whole life has been a failure. I mean, so it's like, it's fine. I'm totally used to it.
Well, we're all learning from your failures.
Oh, thanks.
Just kidding.
At least someone is.
All right, Michael, this has been such a fun conversation. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to ask you one last question. For our listeners, what have we not covered? What do you want everyone to know about pilots? What's working? What's not? What you love about it? What's your hot take?
I don't know if I have a hot take, but I would just say start small, like we talked about. You could rotate furniture in one space, track usage. You could test some 30-day adjacency shifts, right? Be okay with failing and making mistakes, and find trusted partners and people around you that excite you and inspire you and, aren't just going to try to sell you something, but actually want to go on a journey with you. And then have fun with it, because life is way too short, and making some of these changes could be a really interesting adventure to embark on.
That is such a good answer. There's your playbook right there, folks. Before we wrap, Michael, I know you mentioned at the start, but can you just remind everyone best way to connect with you, get in touch with you, be a part of your community?
Yeah, thank you. So my name's Michael Dunford again. And I'm on LinkedIn, so just look up Michael Dunford in Seattle on LinkedIn. And then on TikTok, Instagram, etc., it's Random Workplace Thoughts, at Random Workplace Thoughts.
Awesome.
Highly recommend checking them out. Yeah, super engaging, great content. It's not just entertaining, but very informative as well. So, Michael, please. Yeah. Thanks for bringing the energy today. I feel like you gave us a little mini masterclass on anthropology with some new ideas around prospect and refuge, the neuro-inclusive design. And we hope to have you back for proxemics. Maybe we can go deep on that again at some point. So thanks for sharing all this without making it feel too overwhelming or too high in the sky or pie in the sky. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. To everyone listening, if something Michael said got you thinking, try one of the small experiments like you mentioned. Have fun, see what happens.
Yeah, thank you guys. What a treat to be on here. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. We'll be back soon with more conversations like this. Until then, keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep working forward.